2 years ago, I made a promise to myself. I would dedicate myself to game development and that I would document my journey on YouTube. 2 years later, my channel has over 2 million views. Amber's Tale has almost 3,000 wishlists on Steam, and I have had the privilege to work alongside some of the most talented creatives I know. This is my game dev journey, the story of how games changed my life. Here is a comparison of what my game looked like when I first started compared to now. Fundamentally, they're reasonably similar concepts, but the direction I planned to take was drastically different back then. Now, there is an important thing to note. Normally, when making games, you would start out by just prototyping. You would focus on making a fun, playable version of your game before even thinking about making it look pretty. I didn't do that, and I still don't. The thing is, when you're also making YouTube videos, you really can't develop games in the same way. You have to make sure that whatever you're making actually looks decent. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't have to be quadruple A graphics, but it also can't be a grey box. It isn't visually stimulating enough for a video. And because of this, because I wanted to make YouTube videos as well, I had to stray away from the traditional methods of game development. When I started out, even though I was studying at university game design and development, I had no idea what I was doing. I was stuck in tutorial hell, watching every Brackeys video under the sun, and generally just making it up as I go. Progress is slow and I had no real goal. I didn't even know what the genre of the game I was making was. But luckily, that's where making YouTube videos actually really helped and paid off. I was getting a tremendous amount of feedback. Viewers would point me in the right direction. At the beginning, my goal was to create one good game. So anything I learned served to improve that game. After my first video on Amber's Tale, I added better camera controls and upgraded the player controller for the first of many times. Every time I refactored the exact same script, these small learnings compounded over time. A lot of these building blocks can still be found in the game, just with a smidge more polish. If you're enjoying yourself, please like the video and consider subscribing. And if you like Metroidvanias, why not consider wishlisting it on Steam? It really means the world, so thank you so much. Over the next months, I learned a lot. I started to post consistently on Instagram as another way to document my journey, and that ultimately taught me a lot about marketing my game as well, which was really interesting. It's around this time as well that I discovered Metroidvanias. I just fell in love with the genre. It goes without saying that Hollow Knight was a big reason for that, but also Haiku the Robot was another huge inspiration behind Amber's Tale. They both really carved the path that I'm on right now. They inspired me to really work on things like the lighting in my games. I've actually had people play one of my games before and recognize that it was me that made it because of the lighting, which I hope is a good thing. Maybe I'll be optimistic about that. Not too long after this all happened, I changed the character controller again, this time using a finite state machine, which is something that over time I've really enjoyed working and developing on. The whole idea of a state machine just kind of fascinated me a little bit. I don't know why. Honestly, for anyone making a pretty robust character controller and scalable enemy AI, for a large-scale project, highly recommend you look into them. In my unbiased opinion, they're really cool and really useful. In doing this revamp though, it allowed me to explore some more complex behavior, such as jump buffering and coyote time. This is something that gamers probably take for granted in platformers, but without them, character really would feel rigid and unresponsive. A jump buffer basically allows you to store inputs. For example, when jumping, you don't have to worry about pressing the jump the exact microsecond that your character hits the ground. It gives you that little bit of leeway. After all, not everyone's Faker, and coyote time essentially still allows you to jump even after you've fallen off a ledge, but just for a moment. Now, a few more months had gone by, and I'd added some new enemies into the game. A fox, a ghoul, and a summoner. And you'll never guess what else I updated in this time. Player controller. Literally writing the script now and realizing just how often I did this. It's kind of crazy. But I added some more essential features. Things like a variable jump height and increased gravity when you're falling. This stopped the player feeling floaty, which was some of the more frequent feedback that I got from playtesting. I also added a ledge grab, and I have such vivid memories of trying to implement this because it just didn't work for the longest time. It was really frustrating, and also ultimately became a pretty big source of burnout. I'm just glad that I ultimately decided to continue powering through. The game was at this point also something that was contributing to my final grade at university, so I didn't really have much of a choice. At this point in the journey, I did go radio silence on social media. I would occasionally upload the odd YouTube short, but I think it was about 9 months between devlogs, so yeah, not good. And unfortunately, finishing my degree took precedent over YouTube. It's unfortunate really, but the saving grace is during this time I did make an insane amount of progress on the game. I'd overhauled the graphics again, and I'd made a full playable demo. It was missing a lot, like an exit button, or any kind of menu to be fair, but it worked. Since university was also drawing to a close very rapidly, I decided in a very panicked state to launch a Kickstarter campaign. In retrospect, the game was nowhere near even close to being Kickstarter ready, and it was very, very rushed, so it ultimately didn't meet the funding criteria. And honestly, I was devastated at the time, but it was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me. I took a bit of time away from game development to kind of just find my place in this world. I no longer had a goal to aim for. I had to set that myself, and it scared me a lot. After a lot of self-evaluation, a few different jobs, and about 1,000 hours of League of Legends, which admittedly probably wasn't the best choice, I found my way back to game development again. I looked back at all the positives from my experience. I had actually finished a game prototype. I'd had a couple of hundred people play the game, including Relia, someone that I watched on YouTube consistently and just generally admired, and Mr. Morris Games, the creator of Haiku the Robot, one of the games that inspired this journey in the first place, had shown support for the project and exchanged words of encouragement to me. The game had also been nominated and ultimately won some awards at university.
The Media Arts and Communication Best Project Prize for Game Design and Development.
That was pretty cool. I received an insane amount of support. Speaking of, a real quick shout out to It's a Mogo. They've been a long-term supporter on Patreon and Twitch. And don't worry, Mogo, I haven't forgotten that you're being put in the game. A promise is a promise. After reviewing the Kickstarter demo for a while, I came to the realization that the game didn't necessarily have anything special about it. The abilities were pretty generic, the map wasn't very big at all, and the progression was linear. This ultimately led me down the path to completely overhaul the game's progression system. I created a skill tree inspired by Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Path of Exile, which took forever, really hard, probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in game development, but this would ultimately completely change how you progressed in the game. You were able to choose the order that you unlock abilities, and in turn, choose the order you explored the world. What is realistically a really small update completely changes how you approach the world's challenges. Let's say you unlock the wall jump ability first. You can now scale the side of a mountain, entering a zone that is more platforming focused. It would have its own sub-story, but still contribute to the overarching narrative in some way. Or on the other hand, let's say you choose the slam ability. Well, now you're exploring the caves down below. In a more combat-centric zone, you'll be taking on enemies that are more complex and harder to take down, but that's compensated by your new combat-focused ability. Over the course of the game, you can tackle challenges in an order that is suited to your personal playstyle. If you struggle with the combat, visit a few other areas and come back to it equipped with more abilities at your disposal. You can explore where you want and how you want, and it adds a lot of weight to the decisions you make on the order you unlock abilities. I also really can't wait to see the kind of crazy stuff that speedrunners come up with for this. At this point, the game also went under another visual overhaul. Instead of sticking to using tile maps and maintaining a grid-based design, I opted to be more flexible with pixel placement and stray away from a pixel-perfect approach. And honestly, I think it completely changes how the game feels. Hopefully in a good way. The game gains so much more depth with blurred background and more complex layering of assets. We also redid the camera controls, allowing for more dynamic scene transitions and a more fluid experience when exploring the world. It also gives me, the designer, more control over where I want you to look. For example, I can force a camera to pan up to look at a certain point of interest as you're walking. However, even with all this, progress on Amber's Tale stagnated a bit. I was overwhelmed with how much work was required to get this into a solid playable state. The sheer scale of the project got to me. I was working full time and I didn't have the patience when I got back to continue working on a project that big. I took another step back, but not from game development this time, just from that project. I spent some time working on some smaller games, ones that would allow me to learn new things and apply that learning to Amber's Tale down the line. I built up prototypes purely just to learn how to animate a button. I started live streaming somewhat consistently. I made a game that used the Twitch API that allowed chatters to move their characters by typing in chat. And I also joined forces with one of my favorite YouTubers, Dynam Studio. We entered the 15th Pirate Software Game Jam together, and we came in the top 10. I then joined forces with the Millen Brothers and entered the 16th Pirate Software Game Jam, where we came second.
It's really goddamn good.
I do also have full videos breaking down those experiences because it is too much to fit into this one. So check them out if you're interested. But besides working on these smaller prototypes and entering game jams, I was also working on a smaller commercial project, Project X, a chill 3D city builder. Actually my first actual 3D game, which most importantly had a manageable scope. And we're actually hoping to release that sometime next year, which will be cool. Working on lots of smaller projects really built up my confidence to pursue larger games again. It truly reignited that fire inside me to work on Amber's Tale. And that's where we're at today. I'm back to developing my Metroidvania, and it really has been snowballing. We have a solid narrative foundation that, even though I can't share it with you yet, I am so excited to explore this more in the game. And we also have a brand new zone, Castle Ilaria, based on our game from the 16th Pirate Software Game Jam. I've also reduced my hours at work to part-time so I can work on the game more, and I think it's showing. I mean, 2 YouTube videos in 1 month? That's unheard of for me. If you can take any one thing away from this video, it's that everybody's journey is different. Mine had so many ups and downs, successes and failures. The important thing is that you don't stop believing in yourself. Today is still just the beginning. Your story only ends when you choose to stop, so just keep chasing your dreams. I know that developing games can be tough, whether it's mastering AI, optimizing game logic, or tackling tricky math, but with Brilliant, you can boost your skills and power through these challenges with confidence. Brilliant's hands-on lessons are designed to teach you through problem solving from the ground up. Instead of passively watching lectures, you're actively engaging with concept. This approach is proven to be 6 times more effective, especially for game developers looking to build foundations in math, logic, and programming. Whether you want to brush up on your fundamentals, or challenge yourself with advanced concepts, or develop your mind to think like a programmer and begin writing complex programs to build games and apps, Brilliant helps you break complex problems into manageable steps, and you'll be learning key concepts like making games in a gamified format. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/LazyTStudios, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription.